I'm Bertie.
And I'm Ashrael.
And welcome to the Abbey edition of the Beths Book Podcast. We've got some very, very special segments in store for you today, which include Book of the Month,
book reviews,
and then stay to the end because we will be interviewing Omar from 9H,
who is a book writer, and we will also be interviewing Ms Minkowich. Now let's head to the Book of the Month.
And now we just want to thank the team behind the scenes. Ms Monteith, the Y7 Librarians, obviously, and also the music department for letting us use their recording room this lunchtime. This book of the month is called The Inheritance Games.
The Inheritance Games sounds very interesting.
I have not read it myself, but I know that a few of the behind the scenes crew have, and they have told me that it's a brilliant book to read, especially if you like books such as The Hunger Games. There are 4 books, including this one, which are The Hawthorne Legacy, The Final Gambit, and The Brothers Hawthorne.
Why didn't you read the blurb so that the audience could get an idea about what the book's about?
Oh yeah, sure. $1 billion fortune. Avery has a plan. Keep her head down, work hard for a better future. Then, an eccentric billionaire dies, leaving her most of his entire fortune.
A billionaire dies? Okay, continue.
And no one, least of all Avery, knows why. A deadly game. Now she must move into the mansion she's inherited. It's filled with secrets and codes, and the old man's surviving relatives, a family hell-bent on discovering why Avery got their money. Winner takes all. Soon she is caught in a deadly game that everyone in this strange family is playing. But how far will they go to keep their fortune?
Sounds very interesting.
It does. This book is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Check it out.
I totally recommend reading that. The blurb sounds amazing.
You mind if I read this? So, what books have you read recently, Ashrael?
Recently? Well, I'm still reading Going Solo by Roald Dahl.
That sounds really cool.
It's very interesting. It's an autobiography of Roald Dahl when he was in the RAF.
Oh.
He went to many places. He was in Greece, Egypt, and he's flying planes now. He went down in a plane crash and he's still alive.
I honestly never knew he was even in the RAF.
Yeah, me neither. But there's another one called Boy, and as the name suggests, it's another autobiography by Roald Dahl when he was just a kid.
Didn't we cover one of those chapters in English?
Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, I remember
that one was good.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm reading the second book of the series inside the universe of Podkin One Ear. Universe where basically human dead, now rabbit.
Wait a minute. So, are you saying that there's a hybrid between human and rabbits?
No, they're just rabbits.
Hello everybody, today we'll be having Omar to speak to us today about his favourite book. Hello Omar.
Hello, my name is Omar, I'm in 9H and I go to Beth's Grammar School. Recently I've actually published a book and it took quite a while actually. It took around 3 years, including all the breaks I took. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. What's your favourite book?
I'd say it's my own book called The Devious Plot.
Oh, The Devious Plot. Sounds like a good book.
Thank you.
Would you like to tell us a bit about the book?
Okay, so it started in year 6 when I made it with a couple of friends, but then they pulled out. Mm-hmm. So throughout year 6 and 7, I just decided not to do it. But then thanks to my parents, I managed to push through, and in year 8, I managed to finish it. And throughout year 9, I decided that I would get an editor, and it made it happen. So yeah.
So I like the story. It's a good you get through everything with your parents' help. They give you the support you need, and it's just a beautiful story about how you came to write your book. Yeah. Tell us a bit more.
Okay, so the structure of the book is about this boy. His name's Hakeem, and his parents are just gone one day. finds out that this notorious villain called the Ice King has taken his parents, so he decides to go on this adventure to save them in this like fantasy world. And to make the book took quite a while. In year 6, it was started as a little like joke with friends, and then we did it on a Google Doc, but then they pulled out. So from year 6 to 7, I just didn't really read it or write it. And then my mum and dad, they said we should keep going, keep pushing through, and then we publish it. So that's what I did, and here we are.
Yeah, how popular do you think your book would be right now?
I'm not sure because it is my first book, but I think the experience more is like matters to like show that like in the end like all my CV is gonna say that I've written a book. I think that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah, very good. I wouldn't have been able to write my own book no matter how hard. I did my own comics but never published them. Here's a sample of Omar's new book, The Devious Plot.
Chapter 1. The Kidnap. Once upon a time, there was a young boy named Hakim. He was a very special boy who was able to cast spells and use magic. At birth, his parents handed him a flute with a smooth bamboo surface, 6 equally spaced holes and dragon patterns along the sides. Hakim was also skilled with the bow. He was able to use it to hunt and kill animals, and the force of his arrows was enough to penetrate a giant's skin. Every day, Hakim played his flute in the morning before going to his treehouse, where he met his best friend Roland. At 10 years old, Roland was a year younger than Hakim, but they had been best friends since a very young age. Roland possessed his own extraordinary abilities. He owned a spear with a leather grip and a tip made of metal that wasn't even known at the time. It was tungsten metal. It had the power to shoot lightning on command. On the spear there were some eagle patterns. Roland also had the power to summon and talk to animals, and over the last few months he had been practicing getting better at his gift. On a particularly snowy day, something strange happened. Hakim wanted to ask his parents for his daily coins and for food rations and blankets from the local village shop, but he couldn't find either of them.
That is very interesting. Now let's go to the next interview. Hello everybody, welcome to the next interview. Today we have Ms Minkowich. Hello Ms Minkowich.
Hello, good afternoon.
So would you like to tell us about how you became an English teacher in the school?
Yeah, absolutely. So I initially thought I wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't 100% sure about getting into it. And then I actually came to Beths as a student. And when I was in the 6th form, I was what was called an English peer mentor. So I went into year 7 classes and I assisted with year 7 classes, and I thought, actually, this is really fun. I really enjoy this. And I went to university, and then just as I was finishing my 3rd year, COVID hit, and I left uni and I was going to do my master's, but I was going to go to somewhere different, so I pushed it for a year, and I thought, I don't know what I want to do. What am I going to do for a year? And then Beths sent out a request for a job in the 6th form, which I interviewed for, and I didn't actually get, but they said, would you like to work in the English department? So I worked in the English department doing sort of the same thing, and then that's basically how I got into teaching.
So it's very interesting, Miss. I never knew that 6th formers could actually help out in the younger years.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So what advice would you give for students that would want to be teachers one day?
I think that the best thing that they can do is start practicing early. So don't wait for teacher training to teach you how to be a teacher. Start helping out in classes, whether that be dance classes, clubs, working with younger people, working with peers, because teaching is all about people skills. So the earlier that you practice that, the better. And whatever subject you're interested in, best thing you can do is just know lots and lots about your subject. So reading around that subject and really falling in love with your subject, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with it.
Yeah, I kind of remember I was helping out some of the midday supervisors in year 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my class teacher said that you could help the younger years, and then nobody was going to volunteer for year 2 because they were really naughty. But if I was around them, they would be like angels or something.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I kept on volunteering, and only when my hand went up for year 2, everybody's hands kept on shooting up.
See, teachers are, we talk about, students being the leaders of tomorrow, but teachers are there right by there as well, and it's a really nice relationship to have.
Alright, So, what's your favorite book, Miss?
I've been thinking about this, and it's a really tough question. So I've got a bit of a cheat answer because I have a favourite author,
Okay.
and I couldn't pick a favourite book from her books. So my favourite author is a woman called Isabel Allende. She is a Chilean, Venezuelan author. She writes her books originally in Spanish, but I only read them in English. And I love all of her books. If I read one, suddenly I go through all of them and I read all of them one after the other after the other. I suppose if you really, really pushed me, I would say that my favourite out of her books currently, because I chop and change, it's called The House of the Spirits. It's her very first novel. That's probably my favourite.
Alright, so can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started as a letter to her grandfather, and then it became a book. And it's all about these 3 generations of women in one family. It's from a genre called magical realism, which I've always found really, really interesting, especially because it's a genre that comes from South America, Latin America, which is where my family are from. And it's all about how these women sort of struggle for survival, and they deal with lots of crazy people and characters. And as well, apart from that, their country is going through a massive revolution. So there's just so much going on, as well as the fact that there are these just little moments of magic in their lives as well.
So for those that don't know what magical realism is, like me, would you like to tell us about it?
Absolutely. So, you have things like Harry Potter, which we would describe as fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Magical realism is a little bit different because whereas in books like Harry Potter and things like that, the magic and the fantasy is the biggest part of it, and life just happens alongside it. In magical realism, usually it's life with a little bit of magic sprinkled in, and those are usually the bits of magic are usually based on traditions and family and like cultural myths and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Miss. So, to be honest, my favorite book is so hard to decide because there are so many interesting books, different genres. But I'd have to say my favorite book would have to be from J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Although this is the only book I've read, it's really interesting because Harry Potter has only just started Hogwarts, School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He just makes friends with Hermione and Ron, and then he goes on and he defeats Voldemort, as soon as he finds him. But in the movie depictions, it shows that Voldemort is on the back of somebody's bald head. Yeah, which is kind of confusing because the book doesn't really describe the same thing.
No, absolutely. It's when people argue about book versus movie, they almost always go back to the Harry Potter books and just how different they are and how you can arguably get so much more. I would say you've got a lot to look forward to. Book number 4 is my favourite in the Harry Potter series.
All right, yeah. So, Ms Minkowich, what book are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading a couple of books at the minute. I usually read 2 books at the same time, one real paperback book and then another book on my Kindle. So currently in paperback, I'm reading a book called A Gentleman in Moscow. It's just been made into a TV series, which I haven't seen yet, but it is about a man just after the Russian Revolution who instead of being arrested and put in jail or killed, they say, we're going to let you go, but you have to stay in this hotel and you can never leave this hotel. And it's all about his life in the hotel. And the other one is maybe not quite as exciting. It's called France on Trial. It is about someone who was being persecuted for collaboration after World War II. So quite different books, really.
So the first book that you're talking about, wouldn't the people who are booking for the hotel seem suspicious? As it's always the same room being blocked off.
Well, he used to, because he was a count who was very, very important pre-revolution. But after the revolution, when they got rid of all titles and stuff, they said, you can stay in the hotel, but you can't stay in your nice room anymore. So they put him up in the attic, and he secretly has some money kicking around so he can support himself. But yeah, eventually he has to get used to his lifestyle changing. But the hotel is still functioning, so he gets to live life living in that hotel.
So I wonder, do the hotel staff secretly come up to feed him?
Well, he still gets to eat in the nice restaurants, which are quite lucky. I'm not quite sure how realistic this book would be, but he has actually a really nice relationship with the staff in that hotel. And that's, I think, why so many interesting and funny things happen to him while he lives there, because he's friends with everybody from the head waiter to the florist.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds very interesting, actually. So, Ms Minkowich, what's the difference between reading and writing?
Well, obviously, reading is something that you can do anytime, anywhere, no matter how you're feeling. But I find writing, it's quite a difficult process because it's something that you are pulling out of nowhere, out of your soul, and that can be really, really difficult. When I did creative writing at university, I absolutely loved it, but it was quite challenging. But I think the best way to do writing and to be a writer is to practice, and it's the same with reading. That's why I tell my English students in my form as well, I've told them about, and I know I was telling you guys, about these apps that I use to help me with my reading, because sometimes I struggle and sometimes I have periods where I don't read or I don't feel like reading. One of them is called Goodreads, which is an app online, and that's where you put in books that you're reading, and it's really good for coming up with recommendations. If you like an author, you like their page, and they get you get recommendations based on that, and you hear about new books that are coming out. And I also use Storygraph because I'm very competitive. My form will tell you I'm very, very competitive, even with myself. So when I put my books into Storygraph, which is another app, it gives you lots and lots of stats. So how quickly you read, how many books you read, the type of books that you read, how many authors of one book that you read, and it comes in all these really fancy graphs. And I just find it really, really interesting.
Alright, so what if you're an author of the book and you want to put it on? Because one of the people we're actually interviewing is a book writer in 9H. Yeah, so what would you do for that then?
Well, I suppose I know that because I've done it before when there are the wrong type of covers on the books. You can go on as a member of Goodreads or whatever it is and change the cover of the book to suit it. So I imagine that you can send a message to Goodreads to get books put on there. I know that Dr. Easton has her published works on there. So I imagine that, writers, especially young writers, will be able to get their work out there on Goodreads quite soon as well.
Yeah, okay. So sometimes I just read my book when I have nothing to do really. Sometimes when I'm in the car to tuition, I just feel like pulling out my book out of my bag and reading. Nobody knows I actually keep my book in my bag when I'm taking out all my school stuff out, and then I can just chill in the car and read.
That's my favourite. My favourite time is when I can just read. When I know that no one's coming to bother me about anything, or I'm done for the day. My reward is to just sit down and read my book. I never go anywhere without a book in case I might have 5 minutes where I can get some reading in.
Yeah, you just zone out into the book, and you feel like the voice of the author is actually reading it to you in your head. Or you can just close your eyes and imagine where you are in a war scene or the beach. It's just magical.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I would call it. I'd call it magical. And reading is an exercise in empathy and experience. It allows you to go to places and live lives that you would never normally get access to. It's a real gift, really, reading.
Reading is really fun. We're going to finish off 2 things. Firstly, we'll ask you a question. What did Ms Minkowich want to be before she actually became an English teacher? And the challenge. Bertie, would you like to say the challenge?
Sure, I'll say it. The challenge this month is to read 5 books before the end of May. Once you've completed these, the question and the challenge, come to me and Otto, Ashrael, and you will be entered into a draw to see if you will be interviewed next month.
Whoever notifies us first on either the question or the challenge will get a ×3 chance of being interviewed in the next podcast. All other competitors will have a special mention in the podcast. This was Ashrael.
This was Bertie.
And this is the end of the April podcast.